Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habati fillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A question was asked about becoming fluent in Arabic. So I just wanted to talk about my venture, my journey in learning the Arabic language, and I'm still learning, even though I'm not really formally doing much study. But mainly it's through reading now and just listening. But in general, to gain fluency, especially if you mean in speaking, one of the things that I think for classical Arabic is very important, and I find great benefits, is when I'm in, and I haven't been in a tajweed class in a long time, or had a teacher in many years, but when I was more active engaging with the Quran and reciting it on my own as well as with a teacher, then this helps your tongue. This is the asl for the Arabic language. So learning to recite the Quran, if you don't know, if you're beginning on your journey, then having a Quran teacher for Quran is very important. It is imperative for making your tongue, as I think Imam Muqbil, and probably way before him, rahmatullahi alayhi, probably from the Salaf and from the linguists, that the Quran itself, it helps to exercise your tongue and mold and fashion your tongue for being able to use the Arabic language and acquire it, especially for reading and so forth. And even for grammar, and there are whole books dedicated, which are called like I'rab al-Quran, how to determine the grammatical structure of the Quran, meaning one ayat, you'll read an ayat, and then it will break down each ayat, what the first word in the ayat, what position in as far as grammar it is, all the way to the last word, and that depends on the endings of the words, meaning whether it has a fatha, dhamma, or kasra. But that's outside of the scope of what we're talking about. So that's one of the things that's very important. Secondly, is a lot of listening. Once you begin to gain some Arabic, enough to where you can kind of read in just a basic form, I'd say definitely listening a lot, because Arabic is the language of the Arabs. So if you want to acquire, even though most Arabs do not speak classical Arabic necessarily, but some are closer than others, and especially because our focus generally is learning Arabic to be able to read and understand the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and go to the classical texts of scholarship, then we want to listen to Islamic scholars using the Arabic. And so that is the context where you're going to listen and hear. And even in the news, they're going to speak very eloquently, people, in those spheres. But the point is their vocabulary will not be the vocabulary that we're accustomed to when it comes to the news, compared to the Quran and the Sunnah and the topics of Aqidah and the topics of fiqh and the topics of Arabic language and so forth. So also listening a lot, listening to scholars and so forth. This will help you. And if you're blessed to be in the gatherings of the scholars, then you're able to also see how the students interact with the scholars in order how to make a question, how to address the scholar with the Arabic manners of a student of knowledge, as well as the sentence structure and the kayfiyya, just the how in general. And this comes from listening to the Arabs, or listening to those who are learned in the Arabic language, who articulate and who speak with the scholars. So that way, that will allow for you to be able to form your sentences and structure, and that will be your basis. So a lot of listening is very important. Listening to tapes, listening to, lessons, and so forth. Another piece of advice that one of my mashayikh mentioned when my Arabic, I'd say, I was understanding like 70%. So I was a little frustrated because there was still that little 20-30% of vocabulary and words, especially we were studying books like Sharh Sunnah, Imam Barbahari, we were studying Sunan Tirmidhi and Muwatta Imam Malik. So we were going into these obviously very, important books regarding fiqh and regarding hadith and regarding aqidah and creed and methodology. And it was a variety of different vocabulary. So there would be some frustration on my part, being an English speaker as my first language, that there were parts that I was missing. And I remember going to my Sheikh Sa'id bin Halil Ash-Shamri, hafidhallahu ta'ala, and I said, Sheikh, I'm missing some things and it frustrates me. What do you advise? Do you advise that I take a separate class to learn, to improve my Arabic, just to strengthen it in vocabulary? He said, no, absolutely not. He said, read 2 pages of Ibn al-Qayyim daily and that's enough, and continue in the durus. And so I said, okay, Sheikh, and that's what I did. And so the point I think here, and perhaps the Sheikh was making, but I learned this from practicing that, is that really through mumarasa, and this is what many other mashayikh have mentioned, like Sheikh Abdullah Adani, Abdullah Mari al-Adani, hafidhullah ta'ala. We also had a sitting with Sheikh Saleh Abu Salah al-Afghani. Some of our other mashayikh from Medina and from Yemen, in asking them about some of these things, and one of the things they mentioned just about talib al-ilm, seeking knowledge in general, is to not have inkita. Do not stop. And so I'm going to also, as I said, I'm going to relate to you my journey. So fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be, I don't know how long it'll be. Maybe it'll be till I finish this coffee. So, which is not much. So they said, do not stop. Do not stop. Meaning, whenever you're studying, for example, for you, as we're talking about Arabic, if you're studying the Arabic language, then you don't want to take breaks. And I'm going to give you my example so you can see it concretely of some of the problems that I had because of not having that kind of advice initially, and not, we didn't have what you have now as far as going on the journey of knowledge. We didn't have the same tools. We didn't have the same advice. We didn't have the same infrastructure of the internet, of the tapes, of this, of that, and the other. There's so many ways and ways to learn the language now compared to in the past. So one of the things that's very important in talib al-ilm in general is not to stop. Do not have inqita, because when you do, you will forget and you'll have to go back. And I know people who, for example, a particular brother that I know is a student of knowledge. I mean, he wasn't the strongest, but he was in Damaj and other places. And he also had a problem, although he wanted to sometimes speak about other big issues, but he could not get past certain basic Arabic grammar books. And so in part, it was because of maybe inkita, he wasn't focusing so much in his talab, he was busy with other things. But that was sort of a handicap, if you will, to where he's always got to go back, always got to go back, always going to go back and go back to the same book over and over. Those are some pieces of advice. Now, let me tell you how my journey went. My journey, in general, I started in Seattle, Washington, and I had some beautiful brothers from Philistine. One from Philistine, I wish I could remember his name because I just want to mention his name, but if nothing else, I just ask that Allah blesses him and preserves him, increases his wealth. I haven't seen him in many years, but he is the one who began teaching me Arabic. And also another brother from Sudan, Abu Nasser. May Allah bless him and preserve him, increase his wealth wherever he is in this dunya, and bless him with everything good. That he also taught me and helped me on that journey. He taught me how to read the Quran. He used to sit with me in the masjid there in Seattle, Washington, in the Cham Masjid, which is called Jamal Muslimin. And we would sit however many days a week. I don't remember. Maybe it was because I was probably in the university at the time. So after college, I'd come to the masjid or, whatever. I don't know at what stage it was, but he used to sit with me anyway, very patiently. And Nabil, who's the Palestinian brother, used to sit with me and teach me. He used to teach me Arabic and Abdul Nasser, Hafidullah Ta'ala, he would teach me, he was teaching me how to read and recite the Quran, and he used to make me write. Just learn just the basic thing. Qul huwallahu ahad. So I would have to write it in my notebook. I don't remember all the ins and outs, how many times. I don't remember all those things, but I do remember he made me write. So I could read and write at a very basic level, Arabic, and before I went on a journey to seek knowledge. And from there, at some point, I was inspired to go to Yemen. So I'm going to give you all kind of things here about my life. Maybe this is a chronicle of my life a little bit, of my journey in Islam. So at one point, I decided, a beautiful brother, Abdul Karim, very close to me to this day, he was living in East Orange, New Jersey, in Abu Muslim's community at that time. So I went to visit there. And I was at that stage very close to deciding, I want to go. But at that time, I was trying to go to Sudan. But I think my first passport, I had dreadlocks that were on my shoulders. So Sudan was like, this guy's not coming to Sudan. So they wouldn't give me the visa. I was having problems. And at that time, America and Sudan were having big problems politically. So I couldn't get the visa to Sudan, and I was very frustrated. So I think I went to East Orange in Abu Muslim's community, and I remember some of the advice, some of the people, they said, so everybody was going to Yemen at that time. Some people had already went. And I remember a brother taking me around the Masjid Ahl Sunnah there in East Orange, New Jersey. And he said, you see that brother over there? See that brother over there? See that brother over there? He studied a year. He studied 6 months. He studied 2 years. He said, Ahi, when you go for years. Don't play. And that was his point, that basically don't start and stop. This guy's been to Egypt. This guy's been to Syria. This guy's been here. And there were so many from that community, especially in the East Coast, so many people who dabbled, but only a few really stuck with seeking the knowledge. And then there was also students who were students at the Islamic University of Medina and stuff like that. But I didn't even think of those things. I don't know why, and I wish I would have had that direction, but alhamdulillah, Allah gave me what he gave me. And so my journey ended up, I found out about Imam Muqbil's camp. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about it. But several brothers from that community, like Big Haas, Abdullah McPhee, and some others were going to go to Yemen. So I think I met Abdullah McPhee maybe at that time, and Big Haas, I think so. And of course, my brother Ilmil, who's still in Saudi Arabia, and others. From that time, Abdul Bari and just the whole crew out of East Orange. May Allah bless them and preserve them. And so I remember I had the opportunity to do my master's degree, and I asked Abu Muslima, what should I do? And he blasted me on the minbar. He said, there are those people who say, should they do secular studies or go to study Islamic knowledge? So he just blasted me. He didn't mention my name, but I just asked him the question. So anyway, that determined, hey, I'm going to go to Yemen. So anyway, we'll cut and we'll fast forward a lot of stuff. I ended up in Yemen, met my brother Ali Comptony Clark, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatun wasiya, and he was very close with Hassan Somali at that time. So I met him and Hassan Somali, and I met some other British brothers who kind of looked after me, because I came to Yemen and I couldn't speak anything, but I could read and write a little bit, First time in a Muslim country, I was excited. Just had a visa, had a one-way ticket, maybe $5,000 or whatever in my pocket, which wasn't going to last. I mean, back then it was good. I don't know if I had 5,000. I had a few $1,000s or something. But anyhow, as far as the talab, so I went to Damaj. It was very difficult for me there. because I felt like it was an Islamic monastery. It was just too conservative. There was no women. There was no, and I was a young man who needed to get married. There was no opportunities, I felt like. And also it wasn't what I was used to, this informal study. No one, there weren't a lot of people eager to teach you in those days. It became different later. And I had a British brother kind of teaching me through some of the Medina books, but that wasn't, it wasn't like it was a serious dars. You got to wake him up, and you go and you sit in the masjid and he's going through and explain it a little bit. It just wasn't what I needed. And at that time, latter day generations who came to Damaj, I think there was much more structure. But in my time, no, you'd have to go really find a teacher, and depending on how serious they were, I had some Libyans who used to kind of teach me and sit with me, and others. And so I left Damaj. My money was running short, ended up getting married. You learn to speak, and that's through immersion, But again, a problem there is because at least being in Damaj, we were having durus all the time. Imam Muqbil was alive at that time. He was doing his durus. Sheikh Yahya al-Hujuri was doing a lot of durus, was mainly carrying the markaz, because Sheikh Muqbil was sick a lot of the times, but he would also teach. That was the time Sheikh Muqbil would, and Abdullah Makfi would have his son Abdurrahman, and Sheikh Muqbil would say, Abdurrahman was just a little kid from America, 5 years old, and would just be yelling, and all these Yemenis are like, what is wrong with this guy? He's yelling and saying, hey, I want to go, Abby, let's go out. I'm tired of this, and Sheikh Muqbil's teaching in the Mimbar and stuff like this. 1,000 students are sitting there from all over the world. But the point is it was a little difficult for me to be patient there, so I left, and so that stopped some of my knowledge, and I gained a lot of books at that time. And so I still had the fire to learn, but I needed some other things too. The environment wasn't what I expected, so not everyone could stick out in Damaj. It was a tough environment. Back in those days, I saw hyenas, at night where you can't go to the bathroom. I saw, I used to have these weird, strange bugs that were like giant beetles that fall out of our thatched roof on you. I used to have to, akramakumullah, go to the restroom in a bottle this big, and it's spilling all over my room and all over myself, akramakumullah. But I'm just telling you, the environment wasn't for everyone. So it was a little tough at that time, especially that was way before the internet, way before all that stuff. That was 1997. Okay. So then my point is going on that journey of knowledge, the starting and stop. So I had to pick up, and at one point I ended up leaving after about a year and went to the UAE for just a month or two, but I was broke and I had to go back to America. Some people from Jamaat Tabligh helped me to get back to America. The wealthy, there's a brother who's kind of on the Sunnah, and he, I don't remember how I ended up getting, because people were like, hey, you need to get help. So the Tablighis, there was a lot of wealthy Tablighis there. So and I didn't ask anybody for anything. They gave me. They just, because they would hear my case. Oh, there's an American. He's living in the masjid here with his wife and this and that, the other, And so after a month or two, I had to go. I had to go to America. So I ended up going back to America, and that stopped my talab. That stopped my journey. Then I was back in America, frustrated with because that's what we said, that inqita, that stopping in your studies. So when you stop in your studies, you lose what you were gaining. So I was losing what I had gained. So then I had to, I was eager to go back. So I went back, but I went to Aden and I got a job. I was teaching English, and then I was studying. I was very serious about studying on the side, even so much I paid I had some of the local students of knowledge there in Mashayikh. They used to teach me books like Usul al-Thalatha. First time I studied Usul al-Thalatha, and especially it was in Arabic as well. And also Imam Shawkani's book in fiqh, Nadia, what is it? I can't think of it right now. So I used to have my beloved Adil Ubadi. I don't know what his state is in Yemen. May Allah bless him and preserve him, and his family increases with everything good. But he used to take his time. He took me around all the youth in Mu'alla, And I'd meet them coming from Khormakser, where I lived, and I knew all the Yemenis there in Aden. I was famous, and we just all the Salafi Shabab and students of knowledge, and it was a beautiful, beautiful place and time. So I was really mixing. That helps the speaking, and I was obviously going to Durus, and none of those people could speak English. So and then I paid a teacher to teach me Nahu. So he was a high school teacher or a middle school teacher, and he was bringing the middle school books, and I immensely benefited from there. So one of the things I want to point out is it's very important to get books that you can gain your vocabulary, that you can gain useful vocabulary, especially for speaking, because these were the Yemeni school curriculum, hada batih, this is a watermelon, it's going to give you that language, that's functional language, that usage. So one of the things I would say, especially when it comes to learning grammar, once you get to that stage, is grammar in usage, that you want to learn grammar not by just memorizing. I've tried every methodology of memorizing with note cards, with, writing down vocabulary, but really the most important thing I think overall, and this is what some of the stronger, like Abdullah Makfi, rahmatullah alayhi, he used to mention, and I talked to him too about this when I went back to visit in Damaj, and he was just saying, he said, no, I never use note cards. He says, I never do that. And he became so strong in grammar that he was even teaching the Arabs. And a lot of some of the students of knowledge that are in America now and in other places teaching, they're his students. They learned grammar from Abdullah Makfi and others, and Shakir McGill, may Allah preserve him, and other brothers. And so my point is that that you don't want to stop, and you'll find a methodology. I've tried everything, but one of the things that are the most useful is vocabulary in use, and that you're listening, you're writing, and you are using the vocabulary. If you're not using it in sentences, you will forget it. How are you going to keep that if you never use it? I mean, you'll memorize it and you won't know it in context. You won't, you'll forget. And so this is why it's so important, and this is for whatever language you use, is that you use it in context and in the grammar and usage. And I could go on, but I think those are some of the important things as far as the acquisition and my journey. So my journey was where I did a lot of inkita. I started and I stopped. Then after that time, so I can't avoid this, I went to Saudi Arabia, and I stayed in Saudi Arabia for so many years. So in Saudi Arabia, I had the chance to study formally and informally. I did a lot of dorat that were formally, that give you certificates for studying Kitab al-Tawheed and this book and that book. I studied in Mahar al-Haram. So I studied just a year in Mahar al-Haram. And that's, you're studying a very intensive curriculum. I graduated from the Markaz li Ta'lim Kitab wa Sunnah, the Institute for Studying the Quran and the Sunnah, and of course we studied everything from tafsir to all the sciences. And I also studied in the Islamic University in Medina the Shu'bah, but it was a night program, so it was the Kulliyat Mujtama, and that's where I met a lot of mashayikh that were doing their PhD, like Sheikh Abu Salah al-Afghani, or you might know him as Sheikh Muhammad Hisham, who teaches in Kuwait. So I know Sheikh Abu Salah personally very deeply for that. Myself, Abdullah Lahmami was there. It was in those classes. My close brother, Talib Alexander, and many others, studying in the formal, as well as we were sitting with the mashayikh. So you're studying that just to clean up and get your certificate, but to really strengthen any holes in your Arabic. But at the same time, you're studying with Sheikh Ubaida Jabri during the day, and you're studying with Sheikh Imam Abdul Masin al-Abad. You're studying with, Sheikh Ali Nasser, the Fiqhi, and, all these mashayikh, Sheikh Ibrahim Rahil, Sheikh Sulaiman Rahil, Sheikh, on and on, Sheikh Muhammad bin Adi, whoever. You're studying all these durus, so you're immersing yourself. So all of that is a part of the journey for seeking knowledge, but seeking Arabic is through listening, through reading and writing. And if you want to speak, that's fine. Speaking is like a cherry on the top if you need to. But if you're in America, you may not need to, except for to know how to communicate with scholars or something like that. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. And that's a little bit about the journey. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.